Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good morning to you. Today, student, we will teach you a new chapter in the occupational safety and health. Previously, we already discussed in the chapter 1 to chapter 7 regarding the engineering ethic. Okay, as you know that as the engineer, you need to know first what is the hazards that we arise in the workplace as you become work in the industry, and also try to identify is it these hazards can potentially cause risk to the workers itself. So today the topic is very simple, introduce you the basic concept of understanding the hazard and risk. Okay, this is the scope of the lectures. We will discuss what is the learning outcome of these chapters. We will discuss the overview of the concept of hazard and risk. What is the definition of the hazard and risk? And what can you see the relationship between the hazard and risk? And as you know, we will discuss the 5 agents in the hazard, so-called physical hazards, the chemical hazards, biological hazards, the ergonomic hazards, and also the psychosocial hazards. Okay, the learning outcome of this chapter, so the student will be able to can define the concept of hazards and risks in the workplace. And the second one, you'll be able to explain the 5 agents that arise in the workplace. And the last one, to recognize the hazards and safe condition in the workplace. As you know, in the workplace, in the industry, they use a lot of machine, a tool, equipment that potentially can cause harm to the workers. So it means in our daily life, in the industry, they are potential can cause a risk, and they must be a potential hazards that can cause injury to the workers. Okay, and this hazard have potential to cause any accidents to the workers, either injury, either the death, fatality, or maybe the damage to the property. So the workers may higher risk if the safety and health issue are not highlighted by the management. So the problem is, can you define what is the hazards and what is the risk? Okay, hazards can be defined as any situation in the workplace or work environments which is possible to be interact with the agents. We will discuss later on the 5 agents named physical, biological, the chemicals, the psychosocial, and the ergonomics. And these agents can give health effect to the workers, okay, or employee, that can be resulting the occupational diseases, the illnesses, or the injury, accidents that may cause fatality to the workers. In other words, hazard mean potential to cause harm or injury or disease or the loss to the workers or to the equipment. And what is the risk itself? Okay, by Occupational Safety and Health Administration by US, risk can be defined is the probability or likelihood any substance or agents. We have discussed, mentioned about physical hazard, biological hazard, chemical hazard, psychosocial hazard, and ergonomic hazards, or any illnesses that in the condition of its use. In other words, very simple, we can formulate risk is equivalent by hazard multiplied by the exposure. We're talking about how bad, how magnitude, and also how much that the hazard can potentially cause harm to the workers itself. And try to relate. Is it possible the hazard have the relationship with the risk? Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, when you drive, okay, for like me, I'm familiar with the manual transmissions. Okay, and my friends, my housemate is familiar with the automatic transmission. Supposedly, and at one day, my car have a problems, try to starting up. So I have to rush to the class, and my colleague, my housemate, cannot be able to come in the same class. So I have to go there to borrow my friend's car with have the automatic transmissions. So from that, I assume that I will think that I'm not familiar with the automatic transmission. If I go to the class with the automatic transmission, that drove to me to the class, I will see some risk. I will think that I might be facing an accident. So in this case, you can see the relationship between hazard and risk must be treated very cautiously. If all other factors are equal, especially the exposure and the workers, and the people who are subject to them, then the risk is proportional to the hazards. But however, all other factors is very rare equal. I give example, the formaldehyde, is highly toxic carcinogenic chemical, and it is used in some technique to preserve as the pathological specimens. Put a tissue or so on in the hospital. But however, for this purpose, if it is sealed properly in the tube and does not become airborne when the air is drawn over it, therefore, although it's very high hazardous, but the conditions, the hazard is there, but the risk, the workers who are inhale the chemical will be avoided. Now we go one by one. What is the 5 agents that mentioned in the hazards? First, we're talking about the physical hazard. Physical, it means you can smell, you can touch, you can hear, you can see. So it means the physical hazard can be either in the heat stress, the noise exposure, the vibration using the machinery of the tool, the dust, the airborne dust generated from the process of the machinery or some processes, the humidity in the air, or ionizing or non-ionizing radiation, the mechanical activity, explosive, and the lighting. This is considered the physical hazards. The second one, we're talking about the chemical hazards. As you know, in the world now, we are exposed to the chemical exposure. Thousands and millions synthetic chemical being produced in the factory. Of course, it might be effect to the workers and also to the public. We can divide the chemical hazard by 2 categories. First, inorganic solvents. For example, we have lead, heavy metal like leads, plumbum, arsenic, and silica. Another one is organic solvents, for example, like resin, the glue, the flux. This is the thing that most of the workers are faced these problems, because we can see that 100% of the activity in the industry are using the chemicals, and the employee or the workers might potentially can inhale or contact with the chemical hazard and maybe cause the problem in occupational safety and health issue. The third one, we're talking about the biological hazard. Biological, it means the living cell, either from viruses, either from bacteria, either from protozoa. Any allergen of a biological agents. It might be from the animals laboratory that work under research university, the insect, the mite, the snake, the mosquito, and other thing. Like from plant material, we have very toxic, like for example, that Mexican grass, the fungal and the spore. This is for example, like infectious disease. As you know, bacteria that can cause tuberculosis is due to tuberculosis, Mycobacterium tuberculosis, Brucella, Leptospira, and so on. And also now we're talking about the viruses, H1N1, we're talking about the AIDS, the HIV, we're talking about others, hepatitis. It might be a specific occupation. For example, the nurses, the workers who are work in the health facility may be facing a problem in the viruses exposure rather than in the industry. The fourth one, we're talking about the ergonomics. What is the ergonomy itself? The ergonomy is something that the machine itself must be adapt to the workers. For example, we have a lot of facing on the manual handling. How you upload and download the weights, or maybe the thing from the ground or from the above. So it might be you're facing a problem with the low back pains. You're talking about the carpal tunnel syndromes, among the typists. We're talking about the posture, the workers itself, how it bends. It might be facing a problem, even though it might be exposed to the youngest, what they call employee. Talking about the movement and so on. And the last one, we're talking about the psychosocial hazard. This is very important. This is very chronic disease that now become emerge in the industry. We're talking about the occupational stress. We're talking about the burnout syndrome. Now we have so-called techno stress. You know, for example, now we're talking about a lot of gadgets, smartphones. There is some condition, the user, they are very stressed. How can they select the best gadget from the market? Okay, for example, smartphone. Now you're talking about the what they call touch screen rather than QWERTY screen. So it might be had the problem of the carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, for example, like in the Japan, there is some culture called karoshi syndromes. What is karoshi syndrome itself? Karoshi syndrome, it means the young executive, young workers who are work overloads up to more than 24 hours. Okay, but after that they die from the low blood temperature. This is really happen in the industrial country. It might be happen in the Malaysia. And after this, I will show you some exercise. How can you spot the hazards? Either it is unsafe condition or unsafe act. Okay, I will discuss on the tutorial session later on. So you'll be able to spot, is it this hazard? You can identify what is the hazards, and potential the hazard, the fire hazard can potentially expose the risk. So how you rated the risk? Is it acceptable or not acceptable? So from that, you will be understands what is the hazard and also what is the risk. Okay. As the end of the conclusions, I can say that hazard can be defined as hazardous agents that can cause harm, and the risk is, as the formula, hazard multiplied by exposures. And you need to remember that there is 5 potential agents in the workplace. Okay, we have physical hazards, we have chemical hazards, biological hazards, ergonomic hazard, and the last one we're talking about the psychosocial effect. And you try to have the ability to spot. You'll be able to spot the hazard, the potential hazard in the workplace, and try to categorize, is this unsafe condition or the unsafe act in the workplace. From that, if you have fundamental try to understand the basic of the hazards and risks, you have become a good engineer to try to eliminate. At the end of the objective, you try to eliminate any potential hazards, any potential accidents to the workers, and to make your workplace safe and health in the workplace. From that, I end my lectures. Hopefully you'll be able to define the concept of hazard and risk, and try to already know how to explain the 5 agents in the workplace and recognize the hazards and unsafe act, unsafe condition in the workplace. Thank you very much. Okay.